All right, if you ever speak to a climate change advocate or global warming advocate, they always refer to Al Gore, The Inconvenient Truth. His video that's really kickstarted this whole movement. Well, just pay attention to this video. I'll play a little bit of it.
So much. I followed this. And when I went to the Congress in the middle 1970s, I helped organize the first hearings on global warming and asked my professor to come and be the lead-off witness, and I thought that would have such a big impact we'd be on the way to solving this problem, but it didn't work that way. But I kept having hearings, and in 1984 I went to the Senate and really dug deeply into this issue with science roundtables and the like. I wrote a book about it, ran for president in 1988, partly to try to gain some visibility for that issue, and in 1992 went to the White House. We passed a version of a carbon tax and some other measures to try to address this. Went to Kyoto in 1997 to help get a treaty that's so controversial in the U.S. at least. In 2000, my opponent pledged to regulate a CO2, and then that was not a pledge that was kept. But the point of this is, all this time, you can see what I have seen all these years. It just keeps going up. It is relentless. And now we're beginning to see the impact in...
All right, a little word about that graph. Now, it depends on the X and Y axis of that graph. If you're using increments of, say, 0.0001, the graph is going to look more dramatic, right? I mean, it depends on exactly. So that's when he's just putting it out as a visual effect, but not really as a scientific, because you don't know what the numbers are. And we'll continue.
In the real world. This is Mount Kilimanjaro more than 30 years ago and more recently. And a friend of mine just came back from Kilimanjaro with a picture he took a couple months ago. Another friend, Lonnie Thompson, studies glaciers. Here's Lonnie with the last sliver of one of the once mighty glaciers. Within the decade, there will be no more snows of Kilimanjaro.
All right, notice that prediction.
This is happening in Glacier National Park. I climbed to the top of this in 1998 with one of my daughters. Within 15 years, this will be the park formerly known as Glacier. Here is what's been happening.
All right, so he's using these for dramatic effect. It's not scientific in any way, because he's just showing pictures, and basically, you know, I could be taking a picture in summer and one in winter, and obviously there's going to be a difference. So, I mean, this is all just dramatic effect. Now, we're going to skip a little bit to his graph here.
Now, 1,000 years of CO2 in the mountain glaciers, that's one thing. But in Antarctica, they can go back 650,000 years. This, incidentally, is the first time anybody outside of a small group of scientists has seen
I
this
doubt
image.
that.
This is the present day era, and that's the last ice age. Then it goes up. We're going back in time now, 650,000 years. That's the period of warming between the last two ice ages. That's the second and third ice age back, fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh ice age back. Now, an important point. In all of this time...
Kind of drags this on a bit. Let me just move up a bit to show you the graph.
But they did, of course. And the relationship is actually very complicated, but there is one relationship that is far more powerful than all the others, and it is this. When there is more carbon dioxide, the temperature gets warmer because it traps more heat from the sun.
Okay, so we're going to stop right here. This is carbon dioxide. This is the temperature. If you notice that, it started to rise here, right? So if you do a comparison, it's starting to rise before the CO2 levels actually, and this is repeated. Look at this right here. So here's here, and you have to go a little bit diagonal for the CO2 levels. So first the temperature is rising up, then the CO2 levels are, and it's not an exact copy where you can say, yes, it's a perfect fit. There are gaps, like here's another one where the temperature rises before the CO2 levels. You know, in actual fact, it was rising while the CO2 levels were dropping here. And it's not a perfect fit. I mean, it's just using two numbers that may have a connection, a third connection, but using them to saying they're directly the result of each other. No, they're not. And so I'm going to stop with Al Gore because it's nonsense. The whole thing is just for show, for dramatics, and that's all it is. It's displayed to get your emotions up. You can obviously see, look at the line here, the temperature was already increasing for a while before the CO2. So something's causing CO2, but maybe it's not the CO2 causing temperature rise. Maybe it's temperature rise causing something to do with the CO2 levels. Anyway, we're going to go quite simply. Look, I'm like with everybody else. I mean, if we're going to live in a hellhole planet, then yes, I want to do something about it. But one thing I don't want to do is absolutely go into austerity mode over some accusation that has not been proven, right? And I am a skeptic. I agree with you 100%. I am a skeptic. One reason why I'm a skeptic is because I have a healthy disrespect for the government. In actual it's self-preservation. Having that kind of disrespect for the government and all the lies that they tell you is really helpful in the long run, because you don't get conned into something as ridiculous as this, where you can see graphs where the temperature increases before the carbon dioxide. Now other people have done a better job of superposing these two graphs together, and they actually show that the temperature rise occurs before the carbon dioxide. Anyway, I'm going to go into what really should be in really important news. And as you can see, it's average temperature by country, and it has very few countries have actually updated their information since 2015. Now here's the thing. If global warming were so important, right, why are they not updating the information? Almost everyone has stopped in 2015. Now, if there was global warming, right, it would be indicated, right? There's no doubt about it. If there is global warming, it should be easy enough to put a thermometer out there and check, right? So every country's doing this, and all of a sudden, nobody is updating. You think they would, but they're not. Now, so I'm going to, there's a whole lot of countries here, but I'm going to go with the Northern Hemisphere countries, first of all, because that's where, if you look at Al Gore, that's what he was talking about. The Northern Hemisphere countries are the ones, because there's more landmass, there's more development, there's more CO2 emissions from the northern country. And there's, we're not going to go every country because there's quite a bit, and we'll go with the bigger landmass countries. So we'll start with Canada. Okay, so we're going to go and max out and put it on a graph. Now here's the graph, right? Now, yes, there's up and downs, there's peaks and valleys, there's changes, but it's fairly consistent throughout. Okay, so if you're going back to the next few years, the last few years, you'll see where this is where carbon dioxide is really taken off, right? Okay, there is a year where it does seem like that it was really hot. But then immediately after that, there's this downward trend right there, right? And we had a couple cold winters, maybe not the coldest, but more than average, colder than average. So there really isn't any physical evidence, judging from Canada's data, that we're getting warmer. In actual fact, it seems pretty steady. Now, we're going to go to China, which is another large landmass. We're going to do about 5 of them. And we'll go to the maximum temperature readings. And again, it's fairly consistent. Al Gore did this video, about 15 years ago now. It's been a while since he made this video. And you think that his video had any credence, that the temperatures would be spiking everywhere. Well, they haven't. These last few years, and take this block of maybe 10 years right across here, yeah, you had a hot year right here, but the rest of them just seem average. And with that hot year, you had also a very cold winter. So you had a hot summer and a cold winter, so kind of extreme. And then after that, it kind of went a little bit more mild, and you had a fairly cool summer and probably an average winter. So, I mean, there's no indication from China that we have global warming. Now, let's go to another large landmass. Let's go to Russia. All right, so again, really, I mean, if you look at Al Gore's video, they say that from 1945 onwards, there's been a spike in carbon dioxide emissions. Okay, well, you really can't tell by this chart. Again, peaks and valleys, and again, you know, of course, ups and downs, but pretty consistent throughout. In the last few years, instead of going up, you know, before they stopped recording, we're publishing the recordings, it's actually gone quite a bit down. Now, yes, you did have a hot year there, but I mean, there's other periods from almost the turn of the century where it was almost equally as hot. I mean, it's not a real indicator of any global warming, that's for sure. All right, so last country of notable size is the United States. So let's see what they did. And, you know, again, you know, 1945, which would be around here, there seemed to be a little bit of warming going in this period, but also some cold temperatures. But also, the last few years, there's been a noticeable dip. This is one of the coldest years on record, which looks like it's 2014, 2013 by this graph. And maybe, yeah, it's even colder than this year here. So this is probably the coldest average summer temperature on record. So really not any kind of indication that we're heading for global warming. So here's the thing. I mean, I think everybody would agree. If we were heading for disaster, there's no point in arguing, let's do it, right? But since in true reality, the data does not correlate with what you're saying, is that maybe we should take a step back. And first of all, let's start being more attentive to the actual temperatures and start publishing these numbers and stop hiding the numbers for the last 5 years. Maybe that would help. More up-to-date data always, I think, is always important. And maybe create a model that actually works before you start taking everybody's money and changing everybody's living environment. Okay, so that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.